Good morning. Good to be back in the house of the Lord this morning. Beautiful day the Lord has made. Beautiful fall day out there. My goodness. It's just beautiful, ain't it? I mean, you can just tell the Lord is really just painting a picture and just putting fall. It's fall. And we're going to rejoice and be glad in it, right? He's good to us all. Glad he's kept this old virus away from us. We'll be able to meet. That's a good thing. The number's still going up, they say, here and there, but Lord can hedge us around. Protection. He done Job, but he let the hedge down on Job is what we're in this morning. We're in the book of Job. We'll be in, Job. You know, I thought, none of us want to be Job, do we? We don't want to be in his shoes, but we'll be starting in chapter 3, but we're sort of going to peek back at all that we've found on Job. You know, Job, he lost everything. He's about the richest man in the East at this time. And you know, he lost, just think. Now we know why he lost it. You know, Satan, we know why, but he don't know why. But all of a sudden, he loses everything. Not only that, he lost every one of his children at the same time. All of them. All his kids, all his seed. He had nothing to really look forward to. Then, that's not all of it. Then he lost his health. Now he's full of sores, and his whole body is and no rest. I mean, you could just see him sitting on this ash pile with a broken piece of clay pottery. You know, miserable. And just think, this man was, you know, he was good, right? One day, and then all of a sudden, this is all changed. That's what we're looking at here. And then, not only that, his wife tells him to curse God and die. So he lost his other half, his support. Didn't have no support there. Now we're coming in chapter 3, and we have 3 friends of his. And you know, him 3 friends, boy, I tell you, they were really friends. They mourned with him at first, but you know, these friends, it ends up, they're not very friendly to Job. And one thing is, what they're looking at, they look at things they can't see, right? And they make assumptions of what they don't see. Don't we do that a lot? And don't know? I mean, we do that. Well, that's what these 3 friends are going to do. So here in actually starting in chapter 4, all the way through chapter 37, we'll find these friends. They take their turns. They say something to Job. Job responds. They do this 3 different times. It's 3 different rounds of all 3 of these friends. They'll say something. Job responds. You know, and they do this 3 times, except the last time, the 3rd friend, he didn't respond. A man named Elihu takes his spot, responds, and then at the end of the book, we know God responds. You know, that's what counts. His thoughts, just as one of the little ones said, I don't know which one quoted that, but his thoughts is higher than our thoughts. You know, his ways are way above our ways, but we'll see that in the book. But, you know, Job didn't know what happened to him. Here he's sitting in the friends' mouth. They can't imagine what has happened to him. So here they're sitting there for 7 days. They sit and they don't say nothing. Job don't say nothing. The friends don't say nothing. They're sitting there thinking, you know. And you know, it's big in philosophy. You know what's big today in us? Sports, right? Recreation, things that we can see, you know. But you know what was big over in them days? Philosophy, what people thought. They'd sit around for hours, you know, and like Samson, remember what was big? Riddles. Remember, they tried to figure out riddles and stuff. That philosophy of things, and the Greeks was known big for it over in these times and in these days, you know. And that was big. And here, these 3 friends, Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar, they were very, I guess you'd know them as philosophers. And this first one that speaks when we get to chapter 4 is Eliphaz, and he was probably the most oldest. Probably he had more age than all of them. Probably had more gray hair. You know, you got gray hair, supposed to have wisdom, don't you? I mean, really. I mean, wiser. I like to hear gray hair people speak. They got a lot of wisdom. I like to listen, you know, because they've been around a lot more than ones that ain't got no gray hair, right? So, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be, you know. But, I mean, here, he was the oldest one, and he's the one that starts out first. But here in chapter 3, we're going to start with Job. And Job, when he comes out of his silence, he was the first to speak. And the first thing he does is curses his birthday. And in so many words, down through to about 10. We're going to see that, verse 10. But it said, after this, opened Job his mouth and cursed his day, his birthday. He wished he'd have never been born. Now you think, Job, have we ever thought of that in our life? Maybe young when things seem to happen, say, boy, I wish I wasn't even born. What am I born for? You ever say, thoughts go through our mind, you know. But here's Job. He forgot all the rich, good years of fullness, and he says, I wish I'd never been born. You could tell how miserable, depressed Job is at this time. Now, we're talking about the patience of Job, but now we're going to start to see, it's really getting on. And you know what? We're the same way. Burdens will burden and get harder and harder. And it did for Job here. And he said, cursed his day. And Job spake and said, let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man child conceived. So the day that he was born, curse that day. Not only that, the night that he was conceived, in conception, he cursed that. And he said, let that day be darkness, let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. He says that day would just be completely dark, no light to shine upon it, that God would not even regard it as a day. You know, in a way, you're thinking, or I'm thinking, with all these words, and it's in poetic, it's sort of, you know, let this and let, and it's poetic if you read it straight through. But you're thinking, boy, I bet the old devil, you know, we never hear of him anymore. That's the end of him in chapter 2, but we don't hear of him, but I bet he's sitting right there and he said, listen at him. Listen at Job, you know. He's still accusing, ain't he? He's still accusing. But even in all this, Job kept his integrity, right? He did not renounce God. He did not in his lips. But yet he renounced his birthday. He said he wished he'd never been born, what he was going through. Said, let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Now, this word stain it means to claim it. That the shadow of death claim it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of day terrify it. The blackness of day. He wanted that just completely obscure. Black. Can't see. No light. As for that night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined into the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Now, he's saying, take it off the calendar. You know, they're one day I'd love for them to take off the calendar, but the world made it, and that's Halloween is what I call it. I wish that day would completely be erased and off the calendar, right? Now, that's what he's saying here. I wish the day would be completely erased off the calendar. You know, never be remembered. Let it not come into the number of the month. Lo, let that night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let it be alone. Solitary means alone. Let no joy, no voice come therein. Let them curse it, that curse the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning, who are ready to raise up, arouse, that means arouse up their mourning. Let the stars of the twilight thereof be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. neither let it see the dawning of the day. Boy, you could see that the poetry in this, can't you? You can see, I mean, if you know anything about poetry, or probably in school we read little poems and stuff, you can see how the word is doing, how it's going, and how Job, you know, the first word he says after he told his wife, when she said, curse God and die, the last thing we heard from Job was, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, right? That was it. That's the last words we heard of him. Now he sits in silence, don't know how many weeks, months before the three friends come. They sat 7 days and not say nothing. Then the first thing comes out of his mouth, what does he do? He curses his birthday that he'd ever been born. Forgetting it, you know, he's forgetting the Lord gaveth and the Lord taketh away, remember? So you can see what distress, depression that he is in, the time that has passed, and the pain, the agony has took a toll upon him. You can see what he's saying here. And then all those words from 1 through 9, he has a reason. He says, because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from my eyes. Why did he not want to see his birthday? Why did he didn't want the womb of his mother to open up and even be born? Why was that? That the sorrow from my eyes. He didn't like what he was seeing. He seen. You know, he didn't like all the sorrow that was around him. Why died I not from the womb at stillborn? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? That maybe been born a little while. You know, infants die. I thought, we don't understand that, do we? And Job said, why wasn't I like that? Why wasn't I like a child that was born, maybe opened its eyes and didn't like what it seen and went to death, back to death, you know? I mean, you think of that. Why did I not give up the ghost? And I thought the words that Job says here, why did I not give up the ghost? You know, the ghost, when we give up the breath, we give up what? I thought of Jesus on the cross. What did he do? He done the same, didn't he? They didn't take his life. He gave it. He said, I commend myself. You know, he gave up the ghost. Said, why did the knees prevent me? Now, it's this word prevent, receive me. Why did the knees receive me or prevent me? Why did they receive? You know, I don't know what knees he's talking about. Could be the fathers, could be the midwives, whatever. The knees, you know, when a child is born, they're put on on their lap, right? They're laid on the knees, and says, why did they receive me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have lain still and been quiet, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. You know, looking at this, it's the oldest, really, I believe this is the oldest written scripture. Job is the oldest book we read in the Bible. It's hard to understand. It's hard to understand the language and really pen it. But if you think of this, Job didn't have scriptures like we do to compare. He didn't have all the Old Testament and the New Testament where Christ has come. And didn't have, you know, he had the hope that he had was all that he knew was God, right? When he says, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. He still had the hope of what? Life after this life. We could see that. And he didn't even have nothing to, right, the word to even know, to go by. Do you understand that? I mean, Job knew. He knew God. He knew there's death after life. We could see that in that verse. Now, as we go right on down to these few verses here, he speaks of everyone that faces death. Now listen to this. It says, now he wishes, you know, for now should I have been lain still and been quiet, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. Rest. Rest from what? Rest from what he's going through. Rest from all the anguish. You know, it says when a child is born, it's just a few days and it's what? Full of trouble, ain't it? Right? And y'all that had kids, y'all know that. Oh, what love. but then, oh, what trouble. And you know, you just, different things you had to think about, you know. And here, I thought of this, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. Death was a beginning. You know, death for a believer is the start of life. Now you think of that. Now how can you say that? Death of a Christian is just the beginning. And said, but with kings and counselors of the earth, which build desolate places for themselves. You know what he's looking at? Here he's comparing death will be an even playing field. These kings and counselors, and I thought of these pyramids and these over in Egypt, they're buried with gold and gems and put in elaborate, you know. And then there's some they're not even put in a casket, right? Some bodies are not. But when death comes, guess what? It's level. It don't matter whether you're in a big old tomb, if you're mummified or whatever they used to do, Egyptians and stuff. These kings, these counselors of the earth, the rich will have the most elaborate tomb. But you know what? Death is even for everyone. Said, or with princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Gold and silver will not matter. You know, I thought, I read, I was going to say it's last week, but J. Vernon McGee, he said in his book, said he went to this real rich fella, okay? And the lawyer was in with him in the room, and he passed. Well, he comes out the door, and here's the family. Oh, no, they just couldn't. They said, well, what did he leave? You know, they want to know, what did he leave? What's my part? You know what he said? He said he left it all. He left it all. And I thought as Job sees this, princes, gold, silver, you know what? When death comes, you leave it all. So the lawyer, that was good words of him. He said he left it all. And ever who got it, guess what? When they die, guess what they're going to do? They're going to leave it all. And right on down the line. And that's exactly what he said. Or as a hidden, untimely birth, I had not been, as infants which never saw light. So he thought, he wished he was stillborn. Said, there the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary at rest. There the prisoners rest together. They hear not the voice of the oppressor. Now he's saying people in prison and people that oppresses people, oppresses the poor. When the poor die, he's saying both. He said the prisoners rest. When death comes, rest comes. And here the next verse, the small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Now, I thought this servant, the slave, you know, slavery, we know a lot of slavery today in the news, and you know, everyone, I know everybody's created equal, but here in the East, back here, they had slaves, and they had taskmasters, and some of them were bad. They whooped them, they beat them, they were mean to them, and you know what? He's saying here, death, small and great are there, and the servant is free from his master. That slave is free from slavery when death comes. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul. Wherefore, now let me read that again. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul. So light and life is given to those that's even has bitterness or in misery. Said, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures. You know, in the first of this chapter, Job said, I wish I'd never been born. My birthday, I wish it never had happened. The day would be removed. Here he starts and he says now, I wish I was what? I wish I would die. You know, there's some people get so sick. You know, some people so sick and we hate to see them suffer. We say, oh, Lord, help, you know, take. But, you know, here's one thing about this. It's not our choice. We can't make that choice. God, he has the power, right, to give life and to take life. It's all in God's hands. But, you know, it's hit me, and I know it's hit y'all. You know, see somebody suffer, oh, Lord, you know, just go ahead and take them home. They're ready to go. You know, they're ready to go, and it just breaks your heart to see people suffer. And, you know, that's what he's saying here. They long for death. You know, deep inside, I'm sure they're saying, I just want to go home. I'm so tired. And that's what Job was in this state right here. I mean, he was in that state. It said, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find what? The grave. See, Job had that hope that the grave was not the end. He said they could rejoice after death comes, after he gets out of all what's he going through. He said, I'm going to be glad. The grave, you know. Why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? Now, I want to look at that verse. Job saying, why is light given? And he's looking at himself. He says, why is this light? Why am I still here? Why hadn't I died of all these swords? I mean, and all that's happened to me, why hadn't I faced death? Look what he says. And whom God hath hedged in. Remember Satan told God, you've hedged Job in? Now Job didn't know this conversation, but yet in his words he says that why he's still living is because God has hedged him in, that he can't die. I thought of that. I said, I just thought of that. How did Job he didn't even know, what was going on, but he knew that God had his life, had his breath, and knew that he was hedged in. And he said, in a way he's looking at himself, he said, man, all this, I shouldn't even be living, But he knew the light was coming from God and knew that God was hedged him in, that he wasn't dying.
He's only allowed, when he died, wonder why. Was he still there?
You're right. Yeah, because he's all that Satan put on him, he shouldn't be living. In a way, he's looking at that. Yeah, anybody else, and I thought as much as Jesus went through, that they put him through, and he couldn't even recognize him as a man. Remember Job, the friends couldn't even recognize him either. You'd think, how did he even survive the scourging? Or why didn't he bleed out? I mean, even before they even hung him on the cross. Have you ever thought? I mean, he was that tormented. But you know why? Because God was not, did not, he was God in the flesh. And he gave up the ghost, right? So it was at his time. We naturally looking and thinking, how in the world? There wasn't no natural way that it could happen, right? Well, that's what he's seeing. He's seeing the same thing. He knows God has his life. He said, well, I should have already been dead. With all this that's happened to me, I mean, I shouldn't even be here.
You think if God had told Job all this was going to happen, that he'd still be as strong-willed as he was?
If he what now?
If he'd still be as strong of a person that he was, even if God had told him that he was going to let him go through all that.
Right. Yeah, now that, that's a thought. Job didn't know. God didn't tell him. Now, would he be as strong? What you're saying, if he knew, that's what really, if you look at Job, that really shows Job's character. That really shows how strong he was, because he did know what was going on behind the scene. And that shows how strong he was toward what? Toward God. And here in the last few verses it says, for my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like the waters. His sighing, his pain. He couldn't, food don't taste good. Before I eat, it's there. After I eat, it's there. If he could eat, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you could just say that in that verse. And my roarings, my pains are poured out like the waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is coming to me. You know, that's what's in our minds, really, as human beings. Everything's good, rosy, not having a care, you think, but deep down inside you're wondering, what's next? What's going to happen? Because we're human. We know things. We look and see what other people, maybe cancer. I'm just going to mention one. It could be anything. It could be a car accident. I mean, it could be this, that. And you know what? We're worrying. I mean, we're worriers, ain't we? I mean, deep down inside, we worry about things like that. And in a way, we try to use our security blanket, right? Instead of trusting in the one that holds all, don't we? We sort of, when we think of things like that, we try to make ourselves secure in different ways instead of his way and in him. We have to rely upon him for everything. He's on the throne. He holds our breath. We're just a breath from heaven, right? And you know, but a lot of times we fall back on what? Security blankets instead of falling back on God. And you know, for the thing which I greatly feared, he said, has come upon me. So Job, he feared maybe one of his offspring would pass or whatever, but he didn't realize all of them the same day. You know what I'm saying? But he had fear of that. And he said, it has come to pass. It has come to pass. He said, I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came. He said, I was not in safety. You know, even he had everything, and everything was going just right, and then all of a sudden one day, boom, every bit, his whole life changed. Same way with us. One phone call could change everything that we have our sight.
I think about how Job loved his kids so much. You know, the first of it, he went out and sacrificed for them. He did that for his kids.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, that's the way we'll do anything for our kids. But we can't change what's going to happen. You know, they have to make decisions for themselves and choices for themselves.
Right.
But he tried, but he feared what was going to happen to his children.
Right.
Or he wouldn't have been out there sacrificing for them.
That's right.
At the same time.
And, you know, in a way, and I looking at verse 2, he tried to do everything he could. Everything he could, but he said what? Yet trouble came. So we could be the best, do the best we can, prepare the best we can, but you know what? Trouble's going to come. It's going to come. And now in chapter 4, as we move into 4, said, then Eliphaz, now here's Eliphaz, the Temanite, answered and said, now I like what he says in verse 2 here. And this, you know, Eliphaz, in a way, he's a little bit, I guess I could say, he's not very, real harsh on Job. He's harsh, but them other two, they're going to be harsher. I'll say that. He gives him a little bit of beyond the shadow of a doubt. I mean, his words is not as, I guess, like hitting him with a switch with thorns on it. Them other two are going to be rough, and we'll see that when we go on through Job. But he says, if we essay, this word essay means attempt a word, to commune with thee. If we attempt to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? Now what he's saying, after Job curses his day, and he wishes that he was dead, and he sees that trouble has come upon him, and says all these words, they're sitting there listening to him, and Eliphaz, he comes up, and he says, if we essay to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? Now what that means in English means, if you don't mind, I'd like to speak to you. I mean, just sort of asking Job's permission to speak. Then he says, but listen to this, but who can withhold himself from speaking? So in a way, he asked Job, can I answer? But then if Job said no, he said, I'm going to answer anyway. He said, in a way, that's what that means. I'm going to answer anyway. Because all these words Job's saying, it's got up under Eliphaz's skin. And he says, I can't withhold from speaking. And look what he says here. He says, behold, thou hast instructed many, and thou hast strengthened the weak hands. Now, what he starts at is he's telling Job, hey, when everything was right, Job helped people. They asked Job, advice. Job done, said this and this and this. And that's what Eliphaz is pointing out to him. He said, thou have instructed many, thou hast strengthened the hands of the weak, thy words have upholden him. This word upheld him from stumbling, upholding him that was falling, and thou hast strengthened the feeble knees, the bending knees. Somebody that couldn't take care of herself, Job was a given man. He'd take care of them. And that's all these words. He's telling him that. But, now here's the word but. But now it is come upon thee, and thou faintest. You know what, in a way, in so many words, he's telling him? He said, now, you're supposed to be practicing what you preach, right? In a way, that's what he's saying. It was easy for you to help others, but now you're the one that's in this situation. And he's telling him now, he says, but now is it come up on thee, and thou faintest. You're fainting. You're not trusting. It toucheth thee, and thou art troubled. Is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, and the uprightness of thy ways? Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? He's saying, what's he saying here? He said, whoever perished. See, Eliphaz, he's saying, if you're innocent, you don't perish. But there ain't no truth in that. It rains on the just and unjust. See what I'm saying? But it's in here, what he's saying, well, if you was innocent, you wouldn't be in this shape. He's sort of pointing to Job, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with it, That's what he's doing, he's pointing the finger at. Or where were the righteous cut off? Even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness, what? Reap the same. What's it say in the scripture? You reap what you sow. Right? Elsewhere it says that. Here Job sees it, or Eliphaz says they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness, what? They reap the same. He said, by the black, let me point out in that right there, even as I have seen. Now, what is Eliphaz doing here? He's telling Job things that he's went through, right? That's like a witness that we witness. We witness things that we've went through. It might help somebody, you know what I'm saying? As we testify of it. And people, if we've walked in the shoes, we can help one better if we've not, right? And that's what he said. Even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness, what they do, they reap the same. They've seen it. By the blast of God, they perish, and by the breath of his nostrils, they are consumed. By the blast of what? His anger, his nostrils, his anger, they are consumed. The roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion and the teeth of the young lions are broken. You know, the lions are the king of the beast, I guess you'd say. But you know what? They ain't a very good king of a beast if her teeth are broke, right? They can't eat, they end up what? Dying. If the roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion, the teeth of the young lions, the old lion perish for the lack of prey, and the stout lion's whelps are scattered abroad. The whelps is his children. You know, if you can't feed, if the mommy couldn't feed the young would have to go what? They'd have to go out on their own and eat. But you know, a pride of lions, they hunt together. A lot of them do. You know, that's how they survive. But if it's saying here, the old lion perished for the lack of what? The lack of prey. Said, and the stout lion's whelps, the young, are scattered abroad. Now a thing was secretly brought to me, and mine ear received a little thereof. Listen when he starts, Eliphaz starts in verse 12. After he tells Job, hey, you help people, now you're in trouble, you're fainting, just like a lion that ain't got no teeth. In a way, I'm just sort of tired. It's hard to really get this, but you can see exactly how it's going here. Then Eliphaz, he starts, now a thing was secretly brought to me. You know when somebody starts that? What do? You do this. Boy, I just heard a secret about it. Boy, your ears are popped up. You're ready to hear something big, ain't you? And you know, that's what he's doing. He's building it up here. He says, brought to me, mine ear receiveth a little thereof, said, in thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falleth on men. He said, when I was asleep, he said, fear came upon me. Now, this is almost like you're shaking. You're wondering what in the world has been revealed to him. He said, fear came upon me and trembling, which made all my bones to shake. Now, boy, he's really putting it on here. Now, listen to this. Then a spirit passed before my face. The hair of my flesh stood up. Have you ever done that? Been so scared? Boy, I tell you, I have. I mean, I like when the Lord comes up on in the glory bumps. Go, don't you? I mean, you know, I thought of this, and the hair, boy, he's really laid it on thick. Now, this is what happened to him in a dream. Now, he says, it stood still, talking about this spirit. It stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof. Couldn't tell. Said, an image was before mine eyes. There was silence, and I heard a voice saying. So he said all these words. He's building it up. You're really wondering, what did he hear? What did he say? Now listen to what was said. Shall mortal man be more just than God? Shall a man be more pure than his maker? And that was the big build-up. Well, if you read that, now read them. What's the answer to both of those questions? No. Now look, shall mortal man be more just than God? No. Shall a man be more pure than his maker? Never. Right? And he built all that up, but says something that everybody knew anyway. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a great revelation. And said, behold, he put no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. How much less in them that dwell in the houses of clay, talking about who? Us. Whose foundation is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. You know, I thought, behold, he put no trust in his servants. You know what he's talking about? The angels. Because it says, and his angels he charged with folly. You know, God's created angels fell. Satan, and he took what, a third part from heaven, remember? And you know, said, how much less in them that dwell in the house of clay. You know, God couldn't even trust Satan, which was one of his, I guess you'd call it one of the great angels in heaven. He couldn't even trust an angel. And you know, I thought when Job started, when the devil was come to the heaven, it said he come with what? The angels. You know, God makes the angels what? Report to him. He has to keep, an eye on his creation. But here, he says, how much less in them that dwell in the houses of clay? How much does he have to watch us? Because we're in houses of clay. We were just made from the dust. The angels are like saintly beings. They're created as angels, you know. We were created through what? The dust of the earth. Okay, and that's what he's saying here. How much less in them that dwell in the houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. They are destroyed from morning to evening. They perish forever without any regarding it. Doth not their excellency which is in them go away? They die even without wisdom. You know, the flesh is weak. Sometimes they die without what? Without wisdom. Wisdom is what? You know what the beginning, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So many dies and they didn't fear God. You know, we have a lot out in the world today that have no fear of nobody. Read their signs on a lot of stuff. Have no fear. No fear. Remember that was big years ago. They had little stickers on their cars and stuff. No fear. Well, we need to fear. We need to have more fear. We could see a great revival if we could have more fear of the one that's on the throne that holds the power of Satan at bay. Doth not their excellency which is in them go away? You know, we're dust and we'll go back to dust, won't we? And that's what he's saying here. But Job knew, and we're going to find that later on down through chapters. He said, with these eyes, I'm going to what? See God. He knew. He knew there's life after death. But he knew we were so frail that we're going to go what? Back to dust the way we were made. And, all right, any questions? Please not. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I tell you what, Lord's good. But you know, it's so poetic. It's not. We're just gonna have to try to get. You know, that's the way God's scripture is. I mean, there's so much in there, and I've tried to bring out as much as I can. And I know I didn't bring out as good as the Lord would have me to. So y'all pray for me. Pray that I can get better at bringing little points and not miss some. You know, because. One thing I really liked when I studied that was Eliphaz's dream and vision. I mean, how he poofed it up, and it really is going to be big. And then it just two questions, and we all know the snow. It wasn't nothing big, you know, but he and different things like that you could see. 'Cause if you think about it, this is the oldest writing. Now, that's what we got to understand, the oldest writing in Scripture. So, you know, the language, for them to translate it from all that old language into what we're reading today, I mean, you know, just for us to even to understand any of it. But God's going to give us what we need to understand, to give us a little, just to, you know, he's going to do it. He's going to help us to get, and you know, there are a lot there. There are a lot for us to take.
In the New Testament and Old Testament, the same words come out about read what you say.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And do you think of that?
And like in the oldest, they still read what you say.
That's right. And you think, and that's what I was thinking, where Eliphaz said that,
Yeah.
and it's the oldest writing, even before it's found even in the New Testament. New Testament was wrote way much later. So God wants to what? He wants to get that out, that we're going to reap what we sow. We're going to reap what we sow. So we better sow good, don't we? If we want to reap good, we better sow good. Right?
I think sometimes, Jay, we read more than what we say.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. You sure do. All right, y'all pray.